Welcome to Midweek Talks. We are honored that you're here today. This is a few moments where we're going to help you follow Jesus in the middle of cultural and personal issues, problems, challenges. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Facebook, and YouTube. Make sure that you hit the share button as you begin to listen to this, because today we're going to have a great discussion about health. Now, let me ask you a question this morning. How is your health? When was the last time you actually checked on your health? No, I don't mean whether or not you had an extra helping of mashed potatoes and gravy. But when was the last time you really took your health seriously, your weight seriously? You know, one of the things that we do as church people is we talk a lot about spiritual things, which we should, but we don't often talk about the physical side of our lives. We're okay if we're very spiritual, and that's a good thing, but we never address the weight issues, the health issues, the blood pressure issues, the cholesterol issues, the diabetes issues, and on it goes. Because somehow we think that as long as we're a Christian, that God just kind of overlooks our health. Well, that's not really how it is. And today, I've got two guests here that are going to share their health journey with you. And I want to welcome L.J. Johnson and Bill Stockton today. Guys, I'm honored that I'm able to have this transparent conversation with you. Welcome to Midweek Talks.
Thanks for having us.
So, Bill, I want to go to you first because a while back you shared a health journey that I was like wowed about, because what actually took place was that you turned some health diagnosis around just by changing some personal habits. Let's talk about that, and let's go back there to how this all started and what took place.
Well, last year in November, I actually had a health issue that I had to go to the hospital about. And in the middle of this diagnosis, they found out that I was diabetic. And I had no idea. My weight was an issue. I was 314 pounds. My blood sugar was 245. 100 is normal. For people that know about A1C, my A1C was 8.7. And the doctor, just matter of fact, said, "Well, you're diabetic." And I said, "I had no idea." My blood pressure was elevated.
Let me ask you a question. Did you normally have a doctor's appointment and go to a doctor? You did, yeah. Okay.
And he had tried to counsel me in the past about some limits, and I tried and failed and gave up on it.
We're going to come back to that try and fail thing here in a few minutes.
So I was very shocked, laying in a hospital bed, and I was started on insulin immediately, and I didn't know what to think. Now suddenly my brain, food was the enemy, and what had happened to my body. The thing that turned me around in that was, what got my attention, was that a nutritionist had came in and we spoke at length, and I found out that food is not the enemy.
Let's underscore that right now.
Yeah.
Food is not the enemy.
It's not the enemy.
Okay.
I had my way with my life for over 60 years. I mean, I'm 61, and I could eat anything, drink anything, go do anything, and your body can compensate. But I'd reached that point in my life where my body said, "I'm enough," and I'd become insulin resistant, which means my body was not producing enough insulin to convert the glucose that was building up in the sugar in my body, or I was just becoming resistant because of the weight. And so, so it's type 2 diabetes.
And so let me point this out here that some people may not be aware of, is that when you talk about sugar, we're not just talking about actual sugar and sweets, because there's a lot of food that convert themselves once you eat them into sugar in your body.
Well, any food besides meat products and dairy products has carbohydrates, and carbohydrates is the fuel that your body needs. And that is converted into energy in the form of glucose, blood sugar. You use it, you store it. It's a process. It continually turns over. But with weight, you store it, it turns into fat. Okay, you just store it. And I'd stored a lot. So that got my attention, and
You said at the time you were like 314
I was 314 pounds.
What was your optimum weight supposed to be?
Well, I kind of grin at that. If you go to the doctor's office and look at
Okay.
the charts, you're supposed to be 218, 20 pounds. And I was like, I'll be dead at that. But my optimum weight, I don't know what that is. I didn't really have a goal in mind. Believe it or not, I had a pant size in mind.
Okay.
And so, I've lost 62 pounds since I think 2 weeks prior to Thanksgiving. Now, this all happened right at 2 weeks prior to Thanksgiving. And we had trips planned for family for Thanksgiving and
Yeah.
the Thanksgiving dinners.
Hey, you got to eat Thanksgiving dinner
Well,
and all that comes along with it.
Well, not everything that comes along with it, but the education started really quick.
So when the nutritionist came in, did you have like a aha moment?
I did, because they were serving me on my meals. They were serving me the things I thought I couldn't have in terms of carbohydrates, the white bread. I had oatmeal, grits, things of that nature. And I questioned them. I said, why can't I have this? They even gave me little packets of jam.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, oh, no. The whole process with you is consistent carbohydrates. You're doing this. You're peaking.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing this. He said, we want to get it where it's level. So I asked, so this is okay? He said, sure, this is fine. But it's moderation. It's balance. Understanding what your body needs. And that was part of the process, was learning my body. I went through that, up highs and lows and crashing and not feeling good because my body was adjusting to the limited intake. Because I had this, obviously I stopped my caloric intake, was not as high, but just monitoring what I ate. And this is one of the things that helped me, was a food diary.
A food diary.
I monitored everything that went into my body.
Mm-hmm.
And it just helped me chart it. So I monitored my blood sugar. You learn how to do that. Hospital teaches you how to do that. You monitor your blood pressure and you monitor your weight, and it's every day.
There's a couple of thoughts that come to mind. One of them is that we get concerned sometimes about putting good things into our mind, in our heart, and we try to do that. Mm-hmm. But we don't think that at the same time we're putting bad things into our physical body. And the phrase that comes to me is, what good is it if you're a real spiritual person if you're dead?
Well, I think I made this comment to you before, is that I've learned that health is our responsibility, healing is God's. So it's a weight that we bear to take care of ourselves.
Can you say that again? Because I want those who are listening to grab a hold of this, because there are those that are, they struggle with weight issues.
Yes.
And they say, well, it's not that big a deal. But to say that phrase again.
Health is our responsibility. Healing is God's. You mentioned struggling with weight. I've struggled with my weight my entire life. Mm. I was 160 pounds in the 6th grade. Mm. And it's just been up and down. It's been up. When I say a battle, I have battled it my entire life. But now, I'm not battling it. Mm. I had the aha moment. It's kind of sad it came so late, but...
Well, so I don't want people to think it was easy for you, because you had mentioned to me that when you first started this process of trying to eat right, it was like, how do I do this? So explain that a little bit to help people through the process.
I was probably still a little fearful of what I ate and how I ate. I was packing vegetables and protein, things of protein, and carrying with me, because my body was adjusting. I wasn't sitting there and eating 3 square meals a day. I was trying to eat when I was hungry, but maintain trying to learn my blood sugar, trying to maintain where I'm not dumping things in and eating those things that are healthy. Because carbohydrates are in vegetables too. You know, potatoes. Who doesn't
Yeah.
love French fries and potatoes?
Yeah, I'm kind of a potato guy.
I
Probably
mean,
not the best
and it's
thing,
not
but-
that they're bad, but say
Yeah.
an example of, you know, if I eat steak or something or some chicken, I'll have half of a baked potato, just half of a regular baked potato, and that's my carb load and limit. And I've charted that and understand what my body can take. But so going back to your question is learning, feeling good, feeling bad. Sometimes you're afraid to check your blood.
Right, okay.
You know,
Your blood sugar.
blood sugar, it's
Yeah.
going up, it's going down. You know, I had to make peace with the scales. The scales are not my enemy. Now, for a while, I charted my weight every day. But then I would get to the point I said, I can't do this because it's just an angst. So I said, you know what, I'll check it every 3 or 4 days, and I'll chart it. Because if you look at it every day, it varies, you know, just
Right.
up or down, up or down.
Right.
Make peace with what you can make peace with and realize that you can do this. I mean,
So for those who are diabetic, those of you who are watching or on the border of that, either type 1 or type 2, you may think, hey, I'm a diabetic. This is the way it is. It's going to be this way the rest of my life. What happened to you with this whole diabetes thing?
well, the doctor did give me a grain of hope.
Okay.
He said possibly because of where your numbers are at, he said with diet and exercise, you can change your lifestyle. You can change this and reverse it. So that was my goal. My first checkup with my doctor, not, you know, I was still there. He said, let's go 6 months out. And I said, okay. So I lost the weight, eating right, and my last checkup, all my numbers were absolutely normal or absolutely below the scale, what he wanted. And so I asked him this question. I said, am I still a diabetic? He said, well, it's a good question. He said, we're going to monitor you for 6 more months, and then we'll probably take you off all your medicine.
So essentially, the diabetes disappeared.
It's gone.
It's gone.
Yeah.
I want those of you who are watching to grab a hold of that. That here's a guy diagnosed with diabetes, as some of you have been. And if you're honest about it, you have to say maybe you have some weight issues. This has all been turned around
Yes.
entirely by self-discipline, recognizing what you needed to do,
I need to do.
because it just doesn't automatically happen.
No, it doesn't. It's a discipline. I'd struggled in the past because I was looking at like depriving myself. I can't have this, I can't have that. But it's in all things. It's just moderation and recognizing I'm in control. It doesn't control me. That doesn't mean I don't get cravings.
Right.
You know, I'm a pasta guy. I love spaghetti and pasta. I had to transfer that over to some vegetables, zucchini for you guys, if you want to know about that. But
Ooh, that's a painful thought right there. Okay.
but that's what I had to do. I can eat my weight in pasta, and I can get sick. But that's a carb load that I don't need, my body can't use.
Okay.
So it's also about giving up the sugar drinks, the sugary candies. I'm not I'm a big candy fan, but someone asked me this about white bread. I said, white bread's not the enemy. It's the volume of the processed food that we eat. If you were just to take in a week and look at the white bread, the processed bread that you eat, you'd be amazed. So it's whole wheat, whole grain. I had to find substitutes, and you have to shop, and I learned to read labels. And I've got a fantastic wife that supports me in this and helps me. There was no, you know, harassment or beating me up or guilt. You know, she's my number one fan. If anyone beat themselves up, it was me. And so she picks me up when I got, you know.
I think that's good for people to know, because whatever the issue might be, and we're talking here particularly about health issues, people do beat themselves up.
Oh,
And they feel like that I can't ever do this. I'm just going to forget about it, and they continue to just gain weight and get more unhealthy and get on more medication and actually shorten their lifespan.
I agree. We tend to stuff our emotions. I eat my emotions. That's what I did in the past. I would eat it. I mean, this, and it's recognizing. It's recognizing maybe things you can't control, things are outside your purview, but you have to understand. And this isn't a cliche, but there's things that I can take care of, and there's things that only the Lord can take care of, and I have to trust Him. You know. So I've never said that to anybody, again, to cliche this, but it's a personal walk. And coming to terms with our mortality and understanding there's a purpose in our lives, that God has ordained each one of us with a purpose, and that we need to function in that. And if that means adjusting our lifestyle to accomplish that. Because here's the deal, if I'm to love God with all my heart, mind, and body and soul, and I'm to love my neighbor as myself, then how do I get there? Well, I have to love myself. I have to take care of myself to fulfill that purpose, because it's about servanthood. And a sick and dead servant is no good to anyone.
And I don't want anybody watching to misunderstand. Your walk with God is of extreme importance, your prayer life, the time you spend with Jesus and the Word and things. But if we are to love the Lord God with all of our heart, mind, soul, and body, we don't often talk about that our body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. We think that's a spiritual thing, but it's not just spiritual, it is also physical.
Well, people, if you think about that, people say, well, I don't drink or smoke or, do this.
Right.
Well, other things that harm our bodies. I mean, there's other things. You can just abuse your body.
Yeah.
It's just, we take it for granted, and when it's gone, it's when we suffer. And we ask those questions of God, where are you?
Right.
Well, He doesn't answer those kind of questions.
I want to ask LJ about his journey in just a moment, but the thought comes to me. There are people that come and ask for prayer, and we lay hands on them, and they don't get healed. When in fact, God may be saying to them, if you will just manage your health a little bit better, you would be healed. And there's a lot of people that would find healing not by coming to the front of a church service and being anointed with oil. I may sound like a heretic here. Not by being anointed with oil, but by doing what you did and taking care of your health.
Yeah, I met a woman that was diabetic, and we were talking because we had this common ground, and we were talking about numbers one day. She was showing me her sugar numbers, and she monitors herself 2 and 4 times a day, and she says, I just can't get this down, and I said, well, why? And she confided in me. She said, well, I can't give up the candy.
Okay.
That's her weakness. And I said, okay. And I just listened to her. But for her, it would be as simple as that sweet tooth. Somehow getting that under control and transferring sugar for non-sugar. But she's that close.
Right.
But because she says, I cannot give this up. It can be media. I mean, people can't give up the media right now. So.
Right, yeah.
But, and it's not to down people to say if you did 1, 2, 3 things, you're cured. But it's managing what you've been given. It's stewardship.
Right.
It's stewardship. My stewardship is not the same as your stewardship or yours. It's not the same. But we need to be good stewards.
Yeah.
What qualifies a good steward? That they manage the affairs of the things they were entrusted with to the best of their ability. No excuses.
Right.
That's
no excuses.
No excuses.
Yeah.
Did the best I could with what I had, and my training, knowledge, whatever.
Yep. LJ, you and I have had this health conversation various times in our relationship. Talk to us a little bit about where you've been and now where you are and where you want to go. Because this, as Bill said, and I want those of you listening, this can be a challenge. This is a struggle, and I don't want anybody to think this is just an easy thing, and those people just, some people are just different. Well, I need you to understand, you are not the exception to the rule. All of us have personal challenges that we have to work through. So, LJ, walk through this journey with us.
Yeah, so like Bill, my weight's been a struggle my whole life. And I, though, had those aha moments very early on.
Pause for a minute.
Yeah.
Been a struggle your whole life. So let's go back to somebody who's had a
Yeah.
weight issue, their struggle the whole life. How come?
I've watched and have read many articles about people with issues and challenges, and sometimes those food becomes a dependency for them.
Right.
I had a great childhood, and I don't go back to that. But what I will say is everything that we did revolved around food.
Right.
So I grew up primarily in my very young ages in a small town where there was nothing to do but fish and eat.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what we did. And so my mom, she was great. I still remember, I was thinking about this week, happened to sit at the table and force down those terrible peas.
Yeah.
She would give me that stuff, like I was supposed to, but we ate a lot. My family.
I would have to force down peas.
Yeah. My family was all around there on both sides. So my grandparents, and so we were there every Sunday eating fried fish at their house, and then we would go to my other grandparents' house, and grandparents spoil kids, and they often spoil them with food, and bribe them with food.
Yeah.
So that had been a challenge. So I put weight on early when I was very young, probably about 6 or 7 years old. I started
Just from eating habits.
Just from eating habits.
Yep.
And I will agree with what Bill said. When I look back, when I was in high school, I started learning a lot about balancing out carbohydrate intake then. Now, back in the 90s, there was a big push, and I know that it started in the 70s some, but in the 90s, it was kind of revived again, and so I started learning a lot about that. Nutrition was a big deal because I was a 3-sport athlete.
Right.
Because of that, I was able to eat just about what I wanted to, be a big guy, but wasn't fat, just a big guy.
Right. And I think you were playing football, weren't you?
Playing football, I was track,
So
basketball.
people playing football need to be big guys, right?
Yeah, right,
Okay,
exactly.
yeah, okay.
So it was after I got out of high school, I continued my education in nutrition. And fitness entirely. So I continually educated myself in those areas. But the problem for me was it became like a drug. For me, it was a drug of choice. So some people struggle with alcohol. They struggle with other types of drugs, being promiscuous and all that. For me, if I got stressed, I ate. If I got happy, I ate. And so it was like this constant rotation for me.
I think it's good for people to understand it and have a transparency here that everybody medicates with something.
Yes.
Some people it's drugs, some people it's work, some people it's sex, some people it's money, and we don't realize that whether we're happy or we're sad or whatever, that we're actually using that thing to compensate for something else that potentially could be avoided in our life.
Yeah.
And so you're growing up, you're eating, but that's normal. Everybody has to eat.
Yeah. You have to eat. And it was a lot of the wrong things. And like I said, it was about when I got to high school, my body changed a bit. And I was in the weight room constantly. And so, I was able to maintain the calorie intake that I was having.
Because you were exuding a lot of energy.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And when the gears shifted when I went to college and I stopped playing sports and I was in school constantly in front of a computer or sitting at my desk, I started gaining weight pretty rapidly. And it wasn't that I didn't know. I knew. I just couldn't stop. And so, and this, all the while, Pastor Mark, I'm a pastor at church.
Right.
And I'm telling people, we got to give up stuff and, don't be chained to stuff. And I knew myself the guilt and the shame of saying, be disciplined. And I'm a very disciplined person. And I'm not used to not accomplishing whatever goals I have.
Right.
So I had this one deal with food that just constantly beat me all the time. And so not only was it a blood sugar like a physiological issue with the up and downs, my emotions were all over the place because I would feel defeated constantly, and then I wake up the next morning ready to go, and then I fail. And so it's this constant up and down, and I dealt with that for probably 15 years of that constant up and down emotionally.
I want people to grab a hold of this because some of you listening, you've dealt with the very same thing. You try and you're going to go for it. And then a friend comes over, it's Christmas time, it's Thanksgiving, it's a birthday, it's let's go out to eat, and you feel that you've failed again, and then you say, I'm going to try this again. After a while, I would assume it gets to where, like, I'm not even going to bother. I can't do this.
Yeah. Well, see, for me, I had that until recently. That never happened to me.
Yeah.
And, some people, I think it's based on your personality. Some people do throw in their hands. For me to ever throw in the towel, I was wrestling my youngest son the other day, and I had him in a hold. And, obviously he's 8.
Right, yeah.
And I was trying to pin him to win the belt, and he was like, he said, I am not going to quit. He was just, and that's how that same attitude is what I've had my whole life toward this thing. And I've lost 70 pounds before, but then I put it right back on again. And so that fight's been in me, and it wasn't probably till it was really this past spring that I had my first experience with I'm done. Like and it wasn't that I cared, but I didn't care. It's hard to explain. But
Would it be like feeling tired of fighting and resisting back and
yeah.
forth? So, how, and I don't want to be unkind here to anybody who's listening, but how hypocritical maybe not be the right word. How much of a dissonance is there when particularly those of us who are in the ministry are telling people to live your life for God, discipline yourself, and then those people looking at individuals that are telling them this, that guy or that woman saying do this, are way overweight.
Yeah, I think I've been in ministry for 21 years.
Yeah.
So I've dealt with that. I think the difference is if you're trying and if you care.
Yeah.
So just like anyone else, pastors have their struggles,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
So it's whether or not it's your judgmental spirit. Am I being judgmental?
Yeah.
Am I honest enough to say, look, I have a challenge? For me, when I would speak to crowds, knowing where I was at, beyond my own insecurities of being overweight, as I would say things, I would deal with that on stage.
Yeah.
I'm saying and so I felt like, those things were all motivators to try to help me to shape up and to do what I needed to do to get my health under control. And I wasn't unhealthy per se because I've had multiple blood tests, cholesterol, blood sugars, all that. Honestly, there was no issues whatsoever. My blood pressure was great because even as up to 330 pounds at 6 foot tall, I'm still running miles a day.
Right.
But the weight, though, started getting to my knees, and I started feeling it in my joints. And I started knowing at that point, and I come from a family of diabetics generationally. And so all these factors were in place. And so when I looked at those, I thought, I have got to figure out how to make a change in my own life.
It's good that you point that out because our frame, as we are created, is only built to carry so much weight. And everybody's frame's a little different. That's why people's knees start hurting, legs start hurting, hips start hurting, and knee replacements start happening. But really, when you've lived with that extra weight for so many years, eventually the body just says, look, you got to replace something because it's worn out. It's not worn out because you're just old. It's worn out because it had to carry extra weight on the frame.
Yeah, it's been abused.
It's been abused, right? Okay. So you had this moment.
Yeah.
You said this past spring.
Yeah.
What was that? What happened? What's it looking like for you now?
I think, like I said, I've been up and down. I had, at probably 10 years ago or so, I'd lost about 70 pounds, and then I gained it all back plus some, and then I lost 40 pounds again, and up and down. And so this past January, I got my New Year's resolution ready, and I ended up dropping about 12 pounds up to the spring. And I can't remember exactly what happened. I went out with some friends or someone came over or something. Anyway, I ate and messed up my diet.
Right.
And it was like, it's just like a drug addict when going back, or an alcoholic hitting the bottle one more time. It's like, you get the taste and then you're, and I know that sounds extreme, but Pastor Mark, that is the reality it was for me. And honestly, with many people that I've talked to and coached, and the funny thing is I do health coaching
yeah.
and nutrition, a basketball coach. So I've got athletes and stuff on very strenuous programs, and just to get their bodies physically fit. And talk about feeling of hypocrisy. That's been tough, but I still sense God's calling in that area. And so I constantly go back to Paul talking about, in our weakness is perfect love.
Right.
And, so I'm constantly telling myself that. But as far as that moment, I can't remember exactly what happened, but I remember I just failed, and then I gained all the weight back that I had lost again. And I gained up to 325. And it was when I went, my wife Jessie got rented some jet skis. I've never been on a jet ski. I was really excited about doing it. So we went out to the lake, and I fell off and I got hurt, and I had to go to the doctor. And I saw the scale and I said, God, you have to help me figure this out. I mean, I was worried about my chest because something, I messed it up or whatever. But the scale was just like, you've got to be kidding me. And at that point, I had again that same feeling I've had 150,000 times, it seems like. You got to do something. And so at that point, I started doing research and looking into options to help me deal with my food cravings and addictions.
Food cravings and addictions. And I want to reiterate this, is that we're not talking about drug addiction here. We're not talking about sex addiction, because this is what we do in church. We're talking about food addiction, but it's still an addiction.
It's enslaving.
It's enslaving. And so, the scripture says we become enslaved to or controlled by that thing that controls us. And I want those of you that are listening to just take a deep breath for a moment and say, everybody can struggle with something. Whatever your issue, your struggle is today, we're talking about health, but maybe it's something else. You can get beyond the struggle that you're in right now. So, LJ, what decision did you make?
Yeah.
How did you get beyond it? And where are you at today?
So let me underline the decision-making process that I had went through. Like I said, I came to that point of giving up. I had many ideas, thoughts come to my mind that I had to make changes. So multiple diets and things like that. Never being able to hold longevity in those things. I tried weight pills. I tried every diet on the planet, even though I'm a big advocate for calorie deficiency to help us lose weight. No matter what diet we're on, if we eat too many calories, it's going to be difficult to lose weight, period. I knew that. So it wasn't like, there were charlatans that you meet that will sell you magic, pills and everything. Yeah. So I've tried everything and then proven things that were there. And so finally, I had prayer multiple times. One time I went to this conference. It was an amazing conference. The power of God was incredible. And so masses of people are coming to the front, and they asked me what I need prayer for. And I said, my food addiction. Now, this is years ago. So I've been through this whole process. And so finally, it was about after the accident on my chest, I said, I need to start to look more into a gastric sleeve, which is a surgery that reduces the size of your stomach. So I started doing some research. I have family members that have already had it, had a lot of success with it. And so I thought, I kept processing it. I knew I had already done probably a year's worth of study on it, but then I really dug into it thereafter the accident. And I thought, I cannot do this. I'm a nutrition coach. I'm a fitness coach. I'm on stage. People see me in public. I can't hide this. I can't do this. And my pride was just like, because I didn't want to come to terms with the fact that I needed that type of help, that degree of help. I'm a person that, like I said, I will fight and struggle and scrap to the very end. And there's very few things I look back in my life and I feel like I failed at. And this was an area. So I was dealing with all those emotions. So I prayed about it. I talked to my pastors. I talked to the closest people around me. I talked to my wife, and everybody supported the decision making of me being able to get a gastric sleeve. So I went and met with a doctor, and I thought for sure, I'm going to have to go through this big, long process and everything that was going to have to happen. And he says, let me see your phone, and looks at my phone, and he says, we can do this in about 2 or 3 weeks. And I thought, is this really going to happen? So I still was unsettled. Everything was falling in place. The financial piece was falling in place. I had the support from everywhere that was all around me. All types of advocates were supporting me. Those that were closest to me knew I was thinking about. And supernatural experience happened. I come into the sanctuary here to pray with somebody. You and I were praying with someone. And she was sharing her testimony about whether or not she was going to have a certain procedure done. And she made a statement that she said she heard from the Lord say, let him cut. Well, no idea what she's talking about. When I hear that, I had just left that doctor. And when I heard that, what I felt was a word from the Lord, I said, okay, let's do it. So at that point, I made the decision that we're going to do it. And so on July 2nd, I had
so
a gastric.
we're only a month away.
Yeah, it was about 5 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I had the gastric sleeve, and already my life, I had started losing weight pretty rapidly for the few weeks prior to that, but since then, it's just my life has just changed. I mean, I know it's so early. I'm a little over a month, but mixed with the exercise that I continued to do. Now with this, and I still have cravings. Like I still see things and I'm like, man, that looks good. But my mind says, you touch that, it will not be good. My stomach can't handle it.
Pause right there for a minute because I want people to understand cravings are not sin.
No.
Desire in itself is not sin. And people sometimes identify themselves with their craving or their desire, whatever it might be. But you're saying that, whoa, wait a minute, I don't need to touch that. That's the difference between, the scripture says, lust when it is conceived bring forth sin, and sin when it's finished brings forth death. The desire in itself is in that moment, what am I going to do? And that's the decision that we make. There's no guilt in the desire at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's true. And so, what the difference has been for me is I was actually messaging someone the other day about this, a friend, and I still occasionally deal with I can't believe I did that and I couldn't beat this on my own. I still struggle with that some. And I know it's been a recent amount, not been long off, but I said, I hate that I wasn't able to just do the diet and have the discipline that I needed to do without the surgery, but I needed it, and I've just kind of come to terms with it, and I still have to eat right, and that's the thing.
So that's not like, okay, I did this and I'm good to go. You still have to have the discipline.
This is the thing, is that multiple people end up having gastric bypass, gastric sleeve, or bands, and they gain their weight back.
Right.
I recently watched a show about a guy who had lost 400 pounds and gained 200 pounds of it back and ended up dying in his 30s. And so, you still have to eat correctly. You still have to be disciplined. I needed help to start that habit process in place. And that's kind of where we've landed. And I've just come to terms with the fact now that sometimes we have to go routes that we don't really want to get the help we need to get.
Yeah.
And that was me.
I want people listening to understand it's okay to do whatever you need to do to get to where you need to go, as long as it's obviously don't do something stupid, some sin or something like that. Hey, I want my life to end. We're not talking about that, okay? Don't feel guilty if you need to get help. That's the whole thing. We're a lot of us, all of us, we have this thing called pride in our life. And it's difficult for us to sometimes pull the trigger, but once we do, it makes all the difference in the world. So, since you've had the surgery, what's happened? Tell us.
So like I said, my whole life has changed. I've struggled. I'll tell you, foundationally, there are certain factors that are essential to health. Hydration and water and those type of things. A balanced diet, whatever that looks like, prescribed by your doctor. Sleep. For me, that has been the biggest change of my life. Is I sleep now, and
you told me quit snoring.
Yeah, so Jess, my wife said that I've quit snoring. There was concerns that I actually had sleep apnea. She said she would wake up, she would hear me snore real loud, and then I just would stop breathing. Actually, she said about 10 times, actually, when I was in the surgery, in recovery, that I stopped breathing about 10 times, and they were trying to put a CPAP machine on me, and I had never been diagnosed, but they were trying to do that. And so the snoring stopped. I'm sleeping solid through the night for the most part. And it's my life. I think that the insulin has so leveled out in my life now that I get tired in the evenings like I'm supposed to. That used to never happen. I'm a night owl and I get up early. I still get up early now, but I can't stay up as late as I used to. And I'm thankful. I rest now. And so I think that was contributing to my weight gain as well, because you have to be able to sleep to be able to lose weight.
You and I had this conversation in the past about rest and about just chilling.
Yeah.
And of how difficult it was to do that. And you're saying now that because of the health benefit and the weight loss, those things just were benefits of that.
Yeah, it helped. I mean, earlier on in my life, I started working 7 days a week, and I did that for probably 15 years since I was 17 years old. I did school and sports. I worked on Saturdays, and I worked on Sundays.
Let me just say to those of you watching, that's probably not the best thing for you to do.
That's right. And so I was a workaholic, and I kind of, as I worked my way back and forth between the food and the workaholic part, I never really understood rest. I'm very thankful to you and Tiffany. You guys have really helped me understand that balance of doing the work that I need to do without having to try to put on a show or anything like that. Just be who you are. And so those are things that I knew, but had bad habits ingrained. And so as I began to rest over the past couple of years, that switch went over, but physically I couldn't do it. So mentally I was able to disengage somewhat, but physically I couldn't. So, that helped me. I just can't even begin to tell you how much the sleep has changed my life to be able to rest now. So
what's the weight loss look like?
Yeah, so since June 14th, and I'm under doctor supervision.
Okay, make that point.
Yes.
So we're about 2 months.
Yes.
Okay.
64 pounds.
That's great. 64 pounds in 2 months.
Right. So I will tell you that my doctor is incredible. And so he was, like I said, he moved me into the schedule to get my surgery done quickly. And so I've been under watching. So I told him, I said, I'm dying to start exercising again. Well, they said you have to walk after surgery.
Right.
So I put in like a quarter mile the day of surgery. I put in a half a mile the second day when I went home. And so by 6 days out of surgery, I'd continued that walking process. And I was up to 2.5 miles. And now I run about 6 days a week. It's about close to 20 miles a week. I'm still running. I added weights back in after he said I could about 3 weeks ago. And so, it's a lot of that. And so I went actually to a checkup last week, and he said, I think I want to have you come in here and talk to our other patients about the critical piece of exercise. He says he gets a lot of people that come and do surgeries and things, and maybe they start doing the eating, but they negate the exercise piece. For me, that was never the struggle. It was the other side of it. So that is rapid weight loss, and I get it. But I'm not doing anything I'm not supposed to do. I'm eating how I'm supposed to. I had a nutritionist meeting and everything last week, and like I said, the doctor's giving me the thumbs up, saying it's working good for me. So, and part of that is measurements, because I've lost 8 inches off my waist. So that's good to where they know that that's the concentrated place of where I'm losing a lot of weight.
So take a moment and talk to somebody who's listening that has struggled with this, is debating what to do. What would you say to them?
I would say that ask the Lord to help you come to a conclusion through prayer and through godly counsel. I would say to seek out those people that can speak into your life that you trust, and realize that in any surgery there are major risks.
Sure.
Anything can happen, and you weigh all of those out. But I would say to be honest with yourself and say, I have got to get help, and then find an outlet to be able to get that assistance and that help. So for me, I just want to kind of put this as a footnote. It's got to be godly counsel.
Yeah.
It needs to be. And then I would also, I caution people too. I understand that for some people this type of approach to weight loss or things like that might be taboo, or not think that it's the right thing to do. But I would just say for myself, to get over that, I mean, you got to ultimately land on where you have peace. And some people say, I really feel like God wants me to do this way, and this is like I need to discipline myself. I have someone that's doing a great job that I coach right now. They're losing weight, they're eating right, they're exercising. This was an option for them, and they chose not to go that route right now because they felt like God wanted them to walk it out.
Yeah,
that's okay. So I think that to the person that needs to make a decision, don't be narrow-minded in the thinking, and get godly counsel and direction. Come at peace, and make the assessment. And really, one of the I'm a numbers guy majorly. Yeah. When I weighed out, no pun intended, the health issues that looked like I was headed for, to my medical bills that I knew was there, and
would be in the future.
Exactly. I thought in 5 years, the amount of medicines and things that I could potentially take and how I would feel, and there's, what I would end up paying compared to doing what I had to do to scrap together to help make this happen, I just pulled the trigger. And for me, I know that for some people that, I guess the circle of saying, I need to do something and I don't really want to pay it. I need to do something and I don't want to spend the money. You got to weigh that out over the long term and figure out what are you worth investing in. And for me, I got 3 boys, and I've been able to compete with them. And now I've got a littler one that's he's 8, and so I started feeling some of those pains. But I'm going to have grandkids one day, and all those things are part of what I think we need to keep in mind when we're making those decisions.
Yeah, so it's not just a decision for today; it's 20, 30, 40 years from now.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, Bill, somebody listening today, from your perspective, what would you say to them?
agree with LJ. Don't go it alone. Get help. Get a friend. Get support. We have too many people not in the world, but in the body of Christ that think they're the only ones dealing with something. When I first went through this process and started, I probably didn't tell just a couple, 3 people. But as the weight comes off, it becomes obvious that something's going on in your life. And then I would start sharing that with people. Well, here's why I'm at this point. Mm-hmm. I'm just a private person anyway, but get help, get support. People I've shared with, they go, oh, I'm dealing with this and I'm dealing with that. And I said, well, you can do this. The other thing I would say is don't get confused between guilt and shame. You can feel guilty, guilt associated with behavior. Oh, I cheated, I fudged, I'm guilty of that. Shame is we put shame with identity, which means, oh, I guess it's just who I am. I'm just going to give up, or I'm a loser, or I'm not worth it. Right. Okay, so that's just where people give up. They go, well, I don't even try it anymore. I quit. Because they believe a brand that's been put upon them either by the world, the enemy, or themselves. They believe the lie. And you are worth it. Invest in yourself. Yes. It's okay. Invest in yourself, because it is about you now, but it's also about those that follow you and those that you will come across. And it's a season of life. We will fall in and out of seasons of life, and we will intersect other people's seasons of life. And we will bring into their lives help and friendship and God.
Gentlemen, this has been so good, because it's the most practical thing we can talk about and the most spiritual thing that we can talk about, because it doesn't help us to be so spiritual and be sick. And thank you for being so transparent. Next step for those of you that are listening is to take action. Listening to this obviously is important, but these men, they took action. For those of you who are males and females, and maybe you're a teenager struggling with your weight, maybe you struggle with weight for a long time, it's okay to do what you need to do with godly counsel and make the decisions that you need to make. It's okay. Don't live in the shame. Move out of the guilt, and God will help you. And we pray for you today, for you to be able to move forward and do what needs to be done, because you've got a future. You have a purpose, and God wants you to walk in that purpose in the days to come, greater than you have ever known or experienced before. There's something within you that God wants to bring out of you that will make a difference in the lives of so very many people. Make sure you share this, because there are many individuals that need to hear this. Thank you for being with us today. You're awesome. Join us next time on Midweek Talks.